Hello everybody, and welcome back to our series of videos regarding our Node server and NestJS. We've added GraphQL, we've added our own configuration service, and now I believe it's time that we connect to our database. That we get our database hooked up to our app so we can actually pull in some data from our database and stop returning all of this fake data. So we're going to use this package here called Prisma. And what Prisma does is it essentially replaces an ORM. If we got far enough, we'd probably build some sort of connection to our database and run some SQL and do all that kind of stuff. And Prisma allows you to not have to do all that stuff and instead write some basic code to pull in whatever data you want or to create whatever data you want. We're going to get into creating our own data later on, but for now we're just going to look at this. We're going to add it to our application and we're going to figure out how best to pull the data from our database using Prisma. So you can get Prisma from prisma.io, and it says right there, modern database access for TypeScript and Node.js. Now, NestJS does have a Prisma integration page, and they have a way of connecting NestJS to Prisma. However, Prisma released recently their 2.0 version, and that's what we're going to be using today is the 2.0 version. So we're not going to use the NestJS integration way of doing it. We're going to do our own. I found that it's very easy, very simple, and it's great to get up and running. So let's hop over to the docs here. And we'll go up to set up Prisma for an existing project. And at the top here, you get the option of changing your existing project from TypeScript to JavaScript. We're using TypeScript, so we'll leave it there. And then MySQL or Postgres. And we're going to continue using Postgres since our database is in Postgres. Let's hop down over here to setting up Prisma. So we're going to use this Prisma CLI a little bit. So let's go ahead and add that to our project. Let's hop over to our terminal here. And in your project, you can do a yarn add Prisma /CLI-D with a capital D. That will add it to your dev dependencies. And now that is added. Great. So now you can use this npx Prisma command to use the CLI. We're going to run the init command. So npx Prisma init. Now our application or our project has a Prisma folder. So let's hop over to our Visual Studio and we can look and see right here. We got a Prisma folder with a .env. Now the .env file in your application had this database URI, and we're going to copy this. We don't need this one anymore, but we're going to use this .env file and paste our database URL into here. So this is where Prisma is going to get the database URL to be then added and used as the database connection. Then you also have a schema.prisma file, and you can see here the data source is being set to the environment variable of database URL. And so whatever the environment variable is what the database will connect to. Now I've got some syntax highlighting here. This is easy to add. Just come over here to extensions, type in Prisma, and then you can see this Prisma extension here. It adds some syntax highlighting and auto formatting, linting, and so on and so forth. So that's something useful to add as well. Great. So now we've got Prisma initiated into our application, and we did this whole connection to the database. So now we're going to do what they call Introspect. And looking at their diagram here, this is where we are. We've already created our database. We've created our tables. It exists. And so what we're going to run is this Prisma Introspect. It's going to communicate with the CLI. The CLI is going to communicate with the database using that URL that we just added. It's going to read the schema and bring it back into the CLI. It's going to then update the Prisma schema in our application, in our project, to equal that of the database. That way, whenever the database changes, you can just introspect it again, and you can get the next model updated. Great, so let's go ahead and run that. It's npx Prisma Introspect. So npx Prisma Introspect. All right, so now if we hop back over to our Prisma file, our schema.prisma, we can see here that we've got this model, and this matches our database. I'll show you right here in DataGrip that our our database is right here. We got month, we got ID, month, date, PDF, image, and year. And hopping back over here, we've got ID, date, image, month, PDF, and year. And they all take the right types. They've all got this ID and auto increment, and so it adds its own annotations. So now we've got our model. So the next piece is to actually generate our TypeScript and generate this Prisma client. So we added the CLI, so let's go ahead and add the client now. So yarn add Prisma client. This one does not need to be a dev dependency. And now that that is added, we can come over here and run this npx generate, or npx Prisma generate. And what this is going to do, again, once we run that, we've created the client, so now we've got node modules Prisma client. And when we run the generation, what it's going to do is it's going to communicate with the Prisma CLI. It's going to read that schema that we created. It's going to send that schema back, and it's going to update this node modules folder with the TypeScripts. That way you don't have to worry about all your generated code. It all just lives inside the node modules, and every time you run a yarn install, then it'll just install it for you. So let's do that. npx Prisma generate. Loaded the environment variables, communicated with the database, and it read the schema, and now we have this ability to import the Prisma client into our code. And if we hop back over the documents, you can see their example of doing it here. We're going to go ahead and do that. So let's close that. We're gonna open up our bulletin service, and you're gonna see this code here for getting the database URI using our configuration service. We can go ahead and remove that. We don't need this anymore, and we don't need this anymore. What we do need is to import from Prisma client. We're going to import our Prisma client into here. And then we're going to create a private read-only Prisma, and it's going to be of type Prisma client. And in our constructor, we're going to instantiate this .prisma to equal a new Prisma client. There we go. Great. So now we can call the Prisma client, and this is going to be an async function or async call. So we need to add the async tag to our function, and then we need to update the return to be a promise. And then you can do const bulletins equals this .prisma .bulletins. So now we have this access to this bulletins table .find many, and that's going to get all of the bulletins. And I forgot the await here, so make sure you await that. And then we can clog our bulletins. There we go. And then one last thing to do is after you've used your connection, is to close the connection after you're done. That way the connections are all closed and there's no extra open connections running that could be memory hogs. So we can do this by doing await this .prisma .disconnect. Now, if you're going to make other calls to the database, do all of that before you do the disconnect. Every time this will get run, though, in the constructor, it'll create a new client. So just make sure that you disconnect from that client when you're done. I'm going to leave the data here as a response. That way we don't break our GraphQL, since we're not all the way ready to return this data. So let's go ahead and save that, and let's get it started. So yarn start, and we'll hop over to our GraphQL, and we'll wait for that to get up and running here. All right, there we go. So now it's up and running, and we can run this, and we get all of the mock data we had earlier. But then if we jump back over here to the console log, we see that it has been logged, and that we have the data coming from the database. This is the exact data from the database, and this isn't anything that's been mocked out. So we've made a successful connection to our database. Now, something I realized in creating this video is that the yarn start command starts the server once. And so if I come over here and I change something and save it, it's not going to update this, so I figured I'd let you guys know about this thing that Nest adds is a yarn start dev, and this is what we're going to use going forward. That way, if we ever make changes to our application, we don't have to stop it to then start it again. This will just start in compilation and watch mode. So whenever you make a change, then it will recompile the app without you having to stop it and start it again. So see, now you've got that. And if I make a change, save it, come over here, you can see that it's refreshed again. Great. So now we have connected up our database to our project using Prisma. And next we're going to morph that data into the GraphQL response that we can then receive back into our app and start using. So I hope you continue watching our videos, and I hope that this is a help to you and something that you can learn each and every day. Thank you for it, and take care, and bye.